let's go to the Word and see what abusing power looks like. And we're going through Luke and looking at all, what leadership lessons can we get from Luke. And in talking about today's topic about abusing power, obviously there's a lot of messages that Jesus speaks about with like the Pharisees and everyone abusing power, and there was a lot of things we could have spoken about. But this passage jumped out at me. Now this section is two verses. So I'm just going to read the whole part. And it's Luke 22 verse 63 and 65. Sorry, 3 verses. The men, and the title is "The Guards Mock Jesus." The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. Obviously, these guards were abusing their power. They had a prisoner that they were responsible for, and they were abusing their power. I suppose the thing that I kind of wanted to talk about with this is the ultimate, right? The what happens when you abuse your power, right? Because we've spoken about a bunch of different topics today, about different stories of people abusing their power, using their power, abusing their power. And these are only some of the stories of the millions that are happening every day, and these are the ones that have been caught out. What happens? Obviously, these guards were abusing their power by beating Jesus because they thought that he wouldn't be able to do anything. Dr. Rod, what's going to happen to those people, those guards who abused their power?
Well, if they repented and turned to Jesus as their Lord and Saviour, we're going to see them in heaven. But if they didn't, it's a different story altogether. On the judgment day, they'll be cast into the fiery pit, and they'll suffer the consequences, at least of eternal separation from God, which is as bad as being in the fiery pit, or they'll literally be in a fiery pit. There's a bit of debate over that, but my belief is that there's a literal fiery pit. But even if there isn't, I think eternal separation from God, you're going to wish you were in a fiery pit. It'd be better than separation from God anyway. It's interesting, that this abuse goes against all legal and ethical codes that existed even in ancient times. So although the law protected Jesus from this kind of physical abuse, it happened anyway. And that, of course, is the ultimate abuse of power, when those who have the power know that there will be no repercussions for them, despite what the legal code might say.
Yeah.
And that's probably the very worst abuse of power, because it's an illegitimate use of power, absolutely illegitimate. In this case, most likely it was illegal. So
on that point, I kind of want to delve into that a little bit of like, why do you think it is that people abuse their power? In this situation, it may be slightly different to some of the other stories we've shared, but it's still there's got to be a reason why people are abusing their power. What do you think it is?
Look, I don't think it's simple, and I think there can be a number of reasons. Sometimes it's because people feel incomplete or insufficient unless they are demonstrating that they do have power over somebody else, and I think that's often what leads to abuse in the family. Sometimes someone can develop a hatred of ideas or a group of people, and that will lead them to abuse power because it's the outworking of that very, very strong emotion. And I do think we're seeing some of this in the world today, whereby people, we call it the cancel culture, whereby people become so aggressive if you hold certain views that they actually turn it into hatred against you as a person.
Yeah.
And, there are all kinds of results that flow from that. So that's another kind of abuse. And sometimes, quite honestly, it has to do with the personal characteristics of somebody who just tends to be, sadistic, and it just brings them pleasure. Abusing others brings them pleasure. So there's at least 3 reasons behind abuse of power.
Yeah,
probably more.
You really hit the nail on the head. I was going to say really 2, insecurity. I think that people a lot of examples of poor leadership that I see is insecurity. Trying to overcompensate, trying to dominate, trying to control because of insecurity. And I would actually say your second one that you were talking about kind of falls into that first one, is they feel insecure about not being able to control the situation or whatever, so they overcompensate by doing that as well. If they don't agree with what you agree with, they're insecure in their own ability to be able to live in a world with people that don't agree with them, and so they overcompensate. And so I kind of feel like, I know we talk about people abusing power and we're like, nasty, we can be all against them, and especially these soldiers or these guards that were abusing Jesus, we can quite easily look down on them. But I look at it slightly differently and look at them and go, they're just insecure people. They're just insecure people that are overcompensating, that they're insecure. And I actually feel like the number one cause of insecurity is lack of purpose, lack of understanding of purpose. If you don't know what your purpose is, you lack identity, you lack that confidence in what you're doing, because if there's no purpose in what you're doing and you don't know the purpose in what you're doing, there is insecurity there. And I kind of condensing pretty much our entire course, free leadership development program to below, where we talk about discovering your purpose and how purpose is actually the core of really good leadership. But I believe that insecurity is actually probably the main cause of abuse of power. But Dr. Rod, as you said, what I believe the second reason is just narcissism. There's narcissistic people out there that just thrive on, or sadistic people that just thrive on other people hurting. So I suppose to kind of sum that up, actually, before I go on, Dr. Rod, do you have anything more to talk about the guards mocking Jesus?
I'm sure that at least some of them regretted it later. And I think that's probably the experience that many had. And, we don't know whether some of them might have actually surrendered to Jesus Christ as their Lord and Saviour, that's a great thing. We should rejoice in that. Yeah. And of course, Christianity went on to have a massive influence on the world, and it still does. Mm. It actually brought civil into civilization. And despite the fact that Jesus suffered such horrendous abuse, his message nevertheless became widely established and has really driven Western civilization now for a couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
We need to get it back. We really need to get it back, because I think we've lost something of it, particularly probably in the last 10 years, maybe even less than that. We've retrogressed significantly in Western nations, and it would do us good, I think, to get back to some of the principles of the Christian faith surrounding the way in which we regard one another and treat one another. In particular, that we allow people freedom to think, freedom to speak, and freedom to act within the reasonable boundaries established by Christian principles for living.
Yeah, that's really good, and kind of good segue into our summary. Is you talking about we've regressed? Well, we need to stand up. We need to make sure we are using our power, not abusing it, but using the power. Don't be afraid. Don't cower back. And like Joe Rogan is using his platform and his influence to try to spark healthy debate. We should not be cowering away from the debate. We should be using our power, our influence, our knowledge, and our experience to bring good information, good conversations into the mix, rather than just cowering away and being afraid of all the people that may be abusing their power. And make sure just we understand, why is there an abuse of power? I suppose just to wrap this up, why is there an abuse of power? Like we said, look, someone might just be sadistic, narcissistic, or whatever. Yeah, let's leave that. There's nothing we can do for them other than pray for them, right? Protect ourselves. Go and research. Actually, going on this topic that Dr. Rob was saying earlier is like we need to be educated. Well, educate yourself if you feel like you're suffering under narcissistic leaders or whatever. Then go and research about narcissism. You'll probably find that most of them are not actually narcissistic. They may have narcissistic tendencies, but not a narcissist as a whole. Get educated on all that stuff. However, most people that are abusing power are abusing their power because they are lacking confidence. They're outside of their purpose. They're insecure. Let's just have pity for them. Feel sorry for them. Pray for them. Let's offer them our love and support to try to help them become more secure, and then hopefully they won't be abusing their power so much. But make sure that you're not one of those ones that blurs the lines, that gets lured in to bad situations because of power, because of fame, because of benefit, because of money, whatever. And make sure, please, my encouragement, please, don't be a leader that is abusing power and taking advantage of those people below you. Look, Dr. Rod, thank you once again for sharing your wisdom and time with us today.
It's an absolute privilege, Craig. Thank you for the opportunity.
And guys, if you've enjoyed this, if any of this has helped you, give it a thumbs up. Put a comment below as what your thoughts are, how it's challenged your leadership, and maybe how you are being challenged about not abusing your power. And hey, if you want to see more stuff like this, we'd be honored if you would consider subscribing to the channel. But that is us. Thank you for watching. Be blessed and have a spectacular week, and we'll see you next week. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership Podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.